me. And guess what? On the back of that sewer authority bill for the 30 years I've been at this property, there was warning language on the back. You've seen it on your mortgages. Your tax bills. Hey, if you don't pay us, we're going to file liens against you, and you could lose your property. That was on the back of that bill for 30 years. Guess what's on the back of the bills now that they send out? White paper, blank. Okay, somebody look, because I addressed this in record requests, and I addressed this in court matters, and I addressed this in criminal complaints filed with the DA and the state attorney general. And guess what? I got the state attorney general's attention now. She actually called the district attorney and said, hey, we can't look at this until you guys sign off on it. It looks like there's a conflict here. She told me in a letter, Mr. Fagel, I've called ahead to the district attorney and told them to expect your criminal complaint. Okay, so now I got her attention. Okay, so it's not as complicated as you think it is. Okay, you don't need to learn every law, every this, every that. Nope. What'll happen? Here's how it's going to work for you. You're going to get involved in a traffic ticket matter or some little local tax thing, and you're going to get involved in a little hearing. Okay, and this is where your learning is going to basically really take off, because now you're going to actually be putting this stuff in effect. And Brandon will tell you the things he's done, how many acts, whatever, 20, 30 acts he's been involved in. It starts to become second nature. You know, it just starts to, I can't explain it. There'll be a time when all the wheels, the cogs start to catch, and it all clicks. And you start to see the picture.
It will.
You go, oh, now I see what they're doing. Now I got it. Oh, look at this. It's brilliant what they did. Listen, what they've done is genius. Okay. This whole, everyone's an inhabitant, you know, and you live in their territory. It's a brilliant plan, because they have dumbed us down to the point, like he said, they've made us merchandise. Okay. They've made us members of their corporation. And we just were never taught. We were never taught the basics of how to challenge that. They taught us in school that we have rights. Well, like I said, I kid around. I'm going to give you an F-35 jet, the most fierce jet fighter on the planet right now. I'm going to stick it in your driveway. But if you don't know how to fly it, when the Huns are coming charging over the hill to get you, you can't even climb up to get in the cockpit, because that's your rights, basically. If you don't know how to exercise your rights, you don't have rights. Okay, you're going to get railroaded. So the Huns are going to get you when they're charging over, because you can't get in the cockpit. So you need to learn what your rights are, and you need to learn how to exercise them. And go watch the previous video me and Brandon did. We took you from, that's the administrative process, basically. That's the process you do this sort of before you're in court. Now, you can do that. You could learn that. I think in probably a weekend you can learn how to do that. Mm-hmm. You could copy things that other people did and modify it to your thing. So we taught you both an administrative process, and now we're trying to teach you the judicial process with due process and simulation of legal process, which I'm sure we're going to get in also.
Yes, we are most definitely going to get into that. Now, I just want to answer Jesus Freak, the computer geek here. So I had a preposition or a presupposition of case law before I got Westlaw. Okay. And that was that all judgments were bad, and, you know, there was no rule of law. But that's not a fact. The fact is there's great judges, and they're still ruling on law, evidenced by the fact of the last, 4 or 5 months when the courts were finally forced open. Yeah, they tried to keep the courts closed. They did. But once the courts opened, they had to rule by their document of limitation, their negative liberty document. Okay. And so case law, there's plenty of good case law. There's plenty of great case law. And then there's plenty of great jurisprudence rights. Substantive rights are those rights given by God. So yes, you back up your cases, just like that beautiful case out of the Ninth Circuit that somebody trying to apply for a federal officer statute for absolute immunity, and the judge said, no, sir, you made that choice on your own. But so don't be afraid of these things. The more you read it, the more you assimilate the simplicity of the ideas and get the rest of the junk out of there. What you're going to do is have a foundation you can move forward. So we start administratively. Always start with your records request. I've done the records request for, 50 people already. And every single time, it's not without fail, they get the records request and they go run and hand it to who, Alphonse?
You got to give it to the attorney. Got to give it to the attorney.
It's without fail.
You can ask them if day follows night, and they'll say, "Well, I can't answer that. I'm going to have to give it to my attorney to answer that."
Yeah,
for me."
it's funny, but let's continue on because we do have to get the simulation of legal process because I think.
Let me hit that real quick because I just listen. There's a great the DVDs that Steve has. There's a great video presentation on there on how to do legal research, and to address Jesus Freak's question there. Listen, here's how it breaks down. And he actually tells you right on there, basically, Constitution's number one. Okay, that's top. You cite Constitution number one. 2 would be legislative law. 3 is administrative law and regulations. Administrative rules and regulations is number 3. Number 4 is case law. Okay, that's the pecking order. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 can never supersede 3. 3 can never supersede 2, and 2 can never supersede 1. And neither 2, 3, or 4 could ever supersede number 1, the Constitution. So case law, is bottom rung, okay? Case law is not going to win your case for you. All that's there for to show is, here's what the courts have decided in a similar matter. Well, if you have a similar matter to this, and you can find case law, hey, here's what like selling property. It's well-established law that you need the title to sell property. That's well-established law, okay? So if I'm in a property tax case and I'm citing my rights, I can now pull that case law out and say, hey, the county can't sell that property with property tax certificates. That's illegal. They need the title to sell the property. You can't sell property with tax certificates. Doesn't work like that. Now I could pull that case law out. Not just me saying it. It's the courts that have said that you need to have the title. So it's not my opinion. I'm just not making it up. It's not what I think the law should be. It's what the actual law is. So that's your pecking order. Case law is number 4 actually on there. So if you've got something to supersede that case law, whether it be Constitution, legislative law, or administrative rules and regulations, that will trump case law. Those first 3 will trump the case law. That's that's just to support your stuff, that case law.
And what's amazing, what I have before me with this Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians, folks, this is going to be a landmark case because the case law has gone the last 6 or 7 years where they have set up a discriminatory animus amongst our society. And you have a certain group of people running around saying they're sovereign and the other people aren't. And it's going to become of course, I don't ever see it going that far because it's going to settle because the way I'm writing it, but it would be a landmark case because of the way our courts have been ruling, because every lawyer in this world seems to be only putting things in through their thought process of civil statutes, right? And they don't understand the constitutional law aspect of it. They just don't. So they've set up through case law this idea that this sovereign immunity applies to people depriving you of constitutional rights. They can't. It doesn't. It's a federal question. When I put the 3 federal questions inside this complaint, there's problems, man. There's real problems. But anyway, let's move on because we got to do a simulation of legal process too. Let's get back to the due process because I want people to see this. Let's see if I can do this again. I did it once. There we go. Look at you go, Brandon. You're a computer expert. State constitutions would otherwise require the state's failure to abide by that law is not a federal due process issue. Converting alleged violations of state law into federal due process claims improperly bootstraps state law into the United States Constitution. This is case law right here. Where a liberty or property interest is infringed, the process which is due under the United States Constitution is that which is measured by the due process clause, not that called for by state regulations. Pay attention to the words, folks. Okay, pay attention to the word because there's people out there right now in, say, states like Oklahoma and maybe Ohio where the property tax issues aren't that clear, right? You have a due process federally of your substantive right to own property. Okay. This is a federal decision. Okay. So understand that you have that equal protection of the 14th Amendment. It's a good amendment. It's a great amendment. Okay. Uh, and so I think I only have a little bit more in here, and I'll finish with substantive due process, Section 954. In this country, the requirement is intended to have a similar effect against legislative power. That is, to secure the citizen, and that's what Alphonse was just talking about. Those levels: constitutional law, legislative body. That is, to secure the citizen against any arbitrary deprivation of his or her rights, whether relating to his, this is important, life, liberty, and property. Guys, what we're trying to do is show you the simplicity of these ideas and bring you along step by step, so you get this foundation this bedrock that you won't move from, understanding that what has happened to you has been done by fraud. Okay. Yes, many of them have it right that it's fraud, but listen, we're not going to turn around and use a 1099-A to defraud someone else or anything else, guys. That's not standing on principles. Okay. We're going to hold these people to their feet to the fire by being right, not defrauding anybody else. I think I only got one more thing in here. Let's see. Yeah, that's it. Okay, this is the last one, and then we'll move to simulation of legal process, because I think with due process, all right, we've gone over this on the first one. Okay, for a civil case, it has to come with a verified complaint. For criminal, it has to have affidavit of probable cause. Okay, there has to be some type of issue there where you get summons, which is a service of process, guys. And so mailing a service of process through United States mail is not correct service of process. So that's a bypassing of your right for civil issues. 958, arbitrary or capricious actions. So when I released my final complaint, I think I released the draft of it 2 weeks ago to help some guys on the Big Sib Telegram app. I released a copy of it to help them see the steps, which Alphonse has been great, helped me with that. But protection from arbitrary action is the essence of substantive due process. Due process demands that a law not be unreasonable or arbitrary, and that it be reasonably related and applied to an actual and manifest evil. So nobody can go around making new laws restricting your rights without that restriction being narrowly tailored to a government interest, and it actually eliminate the evil, not slow it, not grind. It's got to eliminate the evil, and in order for it to restrict your due process rights. A statute or municipal ordinance is arbitrary and capricious, and hence is constitutionally invalid as transgression due process requirements if it fails to advance a legitimate governmental interest, or if it is an unreasonable means of advancing a legitimate government interest. Okay, so these are foundational truths that I am trying. Well, I shouldn't just say I, but I and Alphonse have taken this journey together over the last year and a half that we've been friends. And listen, guys, these things, this isn't just made up poppycock. It just isn't. This is real, guys. And we can validate it. We can validate it with case law. We can validate it with constitutional law. We can validate it with American jurisprudence. It isn't something we just made up on our own.
Yeah. I mean, in the most basic form, here's what due process is. It's a notice and opportunity to defend yourself. Okay. So think about what they do with these little local tax bills or something. You don't pay this little local tax bill from your municipality. What you're going to get in the mail is a mailing from the clerk of the court, not even the court, the clerk of the court, and it's going to say there's been a judgment issued against you. Did you ever have notice and opportunity to defend against that without this judgment that happened? You were never served process, like Brandon said. Never had a process server show up and say, Mr. Faggiola, yes, you're being sued by the Township of Aston. Here's the complaint. Here's the summons. Okay, and that would be due process. That would be my ability that would be my notification opportunity to defend myself. Well, I never had notification opportunity with that letter showed up. Okay. I don't, who filed it? Number one, the attorney, he don't know anything about anything. He's got no personal knowledge of anything. And there go your rules. The attorney who created this controversy, he's violating well-established laws and rules. He's violating Rule 602, mostly in every state. It's called Rule 602, and it's a beautiful rule. It states, in order to be a witness in a matter, you must have personal knowledge. Well, that attorney has no personal knowledge of anything he's filed with that court. And unless somebody verified the documents he filed with that court, that's fraud. What he filed with that court is fraud, okay? And it's theft. It's, in a way, it's theft. It's attempted theft. Because nobody from that township or borough or city or whatever verified anything he wrote on those documents before he filed it in there. So you have somebody with no personal knowledge now. And here's what that attorney's also doing. He's also acting like a judge and a jury, okay? He's determined that this statute or that local ordinance, whatever it is applicable to myself and my property, and granted him authority to create this lien out of thin air, okay? Now he's making legal determinations for me. He can have a law degree all he wants. He don't get the determinations about me. If he's got a legal problem with me, he's got to sue me. How? He's got to file a complaint against me, have me served, process with the complaint and summons, so now I can defend myself. Now I can look at who filed what, and I can see his paperwork and go, hey, he don't have any verification of anything he filed. I can't answer this. I'm going to need somebody from the township to verify what he filed. In other words, I need a man or woman to say, I hired this guy to do these things to you. Otherwise, I just have some rogue who's now taking actions against me because he thinks some statute or ordinance or code gave him authority to do that. Well, that's nonsense when you understand the basics of law and due process, what we're talking about here, because he don't get to determine what statutes and codes apply to me. Doesn't matter whether he's got a law degree or not. He don't get to do that. We got to go to court and fight that out in a jury trial. I got to lose. He's got to win. And then a judge must sign an order that gives him authority to go file a lien against me. But he didn't do that. And they don't do that to you in matters. They just take action. That's a violation of your due process rights.
It is. It is.
That's what we're trying to hammer.
The lady that I'm helping, they filed 2 municipal liens against her, right? The law firm did. I mean, and of course, we're doing the same thing, guys. You're gathering evidence as you move forward. There's no point in getting in a rush. You just records request, get the contract, and you start compiling the evidence. And the lady, as we're doing this, as we get this records request back, she's going, oh, wow. I'm starting to see it. Yeah, no, they don't have a right. yeah, they're defrauding me, Brandon. And yeah, of course it is. When somebody goes and puts a lien on your property and wants to go to a local kangaroo court and steal your property for whatever it is, your entire property for some value, and they've got you identified as, and of course, City of El Paso has her identified as a participating entity is the name in El Paso, Texas.
That would be a business. That's a participating.
That's a business. Yeah, that's a legal entity. I mean, that's exactly what it is, Alphonse. That's no doubt about it.
Well, it's funny when I was talking about Steve with this last night. We're talking about this. Here's how the real tax law works. If I was really a taxpayer, and in order for me to be a taxpayer, I'd have to have a business license with the state. I'd have to have a registered business, okay? So if I was a real taxpayer and I owed them $10,000, well, they wouldn't come in and sell my whole business. They wouldn't sell my whole $1 million business, okay? They would come in and confiscate some kind of equipment, whatever equipment I have, and they would sell whatever would add up to $10,000 to take their payment. But what they're doing with this woman, like Brandon's helping, if they were going to try and take her house, which that's their end goal, to try and take her house, if she owed them, they're saying they say she owes $5,000. They will take her whole $300,000 house, okay, for $5,000, and then not give her the other $295,000 or whatever they sell for. They usually sell 50 cents on the dollar. Usually, 50% they sell for it. So that right there proves that you're not a taxpayer. Because if I owed them $10,000, the local county, What are you going to do? Come sell like a 3 foot by 3 foot square like of my land?
Yeah.
Like, you're going to come over the yard. Hey, listen, we're going to mark this off, Mr. Fangio. We're going to auction this 3 foot by 3 foot off. It's worth about 10 grand right now, real estate. No, that's not how it works. And the reason they can't do that, there's no process in law for that to happen. And we're going to cross over into this now. That's called a simulation of legal process, because there is no process for me to be paying taxes for living in my shelter, my land, my property. There's no business activity going on here. There is no action that they could file against me for not paying taxes. So what they've done is they've simulated legal process, because they don't want to go to court that the woman that Brandon's helping. They don't want to go to court and file against her. So what they'll do is they'll sell tax certificates on her property out of court. How do you like that? Just sell tax certificates on somebody's property and claiming that they now sold the property. And somebody asked earlier, what if you buy property at a tax sale? Do you get title? No, you don't get title. There's only one title, okay? And it's funny, Steve sent me a photo from the Florida property office. It states we cannot guarantee title to you. If you buy these property tax certificates, we can't get you title, basically, because we don't own the property to sell it to you. So that's what they're doing, is they're simulating legal process.
Yeah, and they don't know if they're ever going to get sued for it, because the reality is, if they gave you the title too, and you turned around and figured out that you got 2 lawsuits instead of 1, right? So that the button pushers inside the facility, they don't know. Okay. And I'll tell people right now, my son-in-law's dad is the tax assessor for Livingston Parish. He don't know. He has no clue.
No, it's stunning. It's stunning.
He has no clue. What are you talking about? What I asked him one night, just having a beer or two at a family function. I'm like, you know what ad valorem means? Just simple questions, but he's just a politician. He just does what politicians do for his state. And if he does know, he was very convincing in making me believe that he didn't know, but I don't think he knows. I think at this stage of the game, Alphonse, that's been going on for so long, that people are just doing their jobs, and they've never been challenged in most places except for like Orlando, where Steve challenged them, and the few people that do get them, the Dick Cheneys of the world who never paid taxes and things of that nature, your higher echelon lawyers that never pay property taxes. They've never been challenged.
Yeah, Steve's got he told me about 20 properties off just in his county. Just in his county, he's got, so I'm sure they hate Steve, okay, down there where he's at. But here's what simulation of legal process is, what Brandon was talking about, is all your property taxes, they're ad valorem taxes. Okay, it's called an ad valorem real estate tax. It means according to value. Well, if you go read the actual the federal constitution, what taxes are, they can only charge duties, imposts, and excise taxes. Okay, so if I had a business, say I registered a business with this state, with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and I'm conducting the business out of my house. And so they would charge me an excise tax for the privilege of doing the business. And they would charge me a property tax because I'm using my property to conduct the business. Okay. That's why when you hear the term homestead exemption, that's where that came from, basically. Back when they started this stuff, back in the 1850s, whatever, a lot of people were farmers. So they couldn't tax the guy's property where his family lived, so they had to give him a homestead exemption. So maybe 25% of his land was his actual property where he lived, his family lived, and his shelter was his house. And the other 75% was farmland. So they had to give him a homestead exemption. They had to exempt his home because they couldn't tax it. So now what they've done is they now give homestead exemptions out like candy to people.
Yeah, they do. That creates a situs. It creates a direct situs. Look, you want a homestead?
There you go. It lowers your taxes, and people go, "I'll take that. I don't care. I got a homestead exemption," not knowing what a homestead exemption is or where it really came from. So that's a simulation of legal process run into itself. They basically took the homestead exemption process and they've twisted it into something it was never meant for. Okay.
Well, and let's go back to this. I want people to understand this concept that I'm about to lay down here. if the government comes, if your state government or local government comes in and offers you an exemption, right? Know that there's a right that already is there. Okay, the exemption itself is hiding the fact that you have a right already. That's just be mindful of that. Be aware of the whole little tricky word exemption there. They're not doing anything for your benefit when it comes to exemptions. Okay, that means the right already exists to be exempt. They're trying to create that situs.
And here's, I mean, I like to try and snap people out of the matrix, like out of the pod where Neo, they snapped them out of there.
Yeah.
And it's really no more complicated than this. Listen, you've got a right to free speech. Can they tax your right to free speech? No. Okay. You've got a right to acquire, possess, and protect property. It's right there in your state constitution. It's probably number 1 or 2, right there. And you go Article 1 or 2, you're going to find your right to acquire, possess, protect property. So you have a right to own that property. I have a right to own this property here. So what they're trying to say is now they're going to tax the value of my property. Wait, aren't you taxing my right? If I have a right to own the property, how can you tax the value of that right, of what I decide to buy? They can't. Okay. And that alone, that little basic thing, when you understand that they can't tax rights. Well, if you have a right to own your property, how the heck are they charging you a property tax? How can they tax something they don't own? That's something you have a right to own.
They can't.
Okay. And they got you just through conditioning. You've just bought into this. And
the case law reads a right cannot be taxed. Right. It's all over the place. That idea. But you're right. A fundamental right can't be taxed. Listen, folks, the whole reason we left King George was to own property and it not be taxed.
Well, that's why they picked up muskets and started shooting redcoats. That's exactly why they did it. They said, hey, we could live better lives than this. Like I said, that wasn't about a tea tax. That war, that was about property rights. That was a property rights war. The Revolutionary War. They were getting taxed to death, and they said, no. And that's another thing to touch on. Let's dispel this little myth too. You can only own property allodial in the United States. Okay, property ownership is either absolute or it's conditional.
Right.
And to me, absolute will be when you pay your mortgage off and there's no other lender, there's nobody there. You own it absolutely. Okay. If you have a mortgage, you still have rights of an allodial owner as long as you keep paying that mortgage. But technically, you're not the absolute owner of the property yet until you actually pay it off. So, like I said, you can only own property allodial, absolute or conditional. So, right, if you have a mortgage, there's still a condition with that ownership. But as long as you pay that, you're paying that mortgage, you have all the same exact rights as the guy who owned that property outright. So the mortgage has nothing to do with the taxes, whether the county can tax you or not. They're totally two separate things. They're two separate total things. And you don't need to go chase down an allodial title, which all these people are telling you to do. Oh, you got to go get your allodial title and that'll give you this. And no. Listen, you have a allodial title, okay? And I don't want to hear about a warranty deed. That's a certificate. That's not the real deed. No. You could have a deed on a piece of toilet paper. If Brandon sold me something and he wrote this receipt on a piece of toilet paper, that's the title, okay? That's my title. I just need to have proof that I bought it and that I paid for it. All title is proof of ownership. Title's not ownership. It's proof of ownership. So somebody says, is that yours, Mr. Vangelo? Yeah, here's the title on it. Okay. Now, if you want to get deeper into it, now I can go pull out the bill of sale. Hey, look, here's the money I paid for this to go along with the title. The bill of sale is also just another proof of ownership. Okay.
That's right.
So don't believe that when you register your car with the state that they now own it. Okay. I've heard this one over and over again. Listen, when you register something, you don't lose rights in the thing you register, nor you don't waive your rights in the thing you register, nor do you grant rights to any other legal entity, including the state. Okay, so you got to get that out of your head. And when he'll tell you when you read property rights in American jurisprudence, they couldn't be more clear what property rights are. Okay,
no, it's explicit. It's so explicit that the first time I started reading American jurisprudence, my I couldn't gather all of it in because it was so foreign. And you know it, the same feeling when I read it every day. I'll come home from work and I'll sit down for 2 or 3 hours and I'll read just certain sections of it. And every time I find something else, because just like when you read something the first time, you don't gather all the information. But yeah, it really blew my mind. I was like, man, this is they're not beating around the bush here. And of course, and it ends up with me thinking about things like Roe v. Wade, why that exclusive right and why they ruled that way. It's so exclusive, folks. It's so exclusive that no one in this world can take your property without interest or ownership and without due process unless you let them have it. And really, that's all.
Yeah, we gave that pecking order: Constitution and legislative law. Okay, so there's two parts to legislative law. A real law is one that the assembly, your state assembly, which is a combination of your Congress and your Senate, they get together, they come up with this bill, and then they give it to the governor to sign. That's a real law. Okay, that's the way that the proper law works. Then you have something called statutes. These are legislative directives. They could come from the Congress, they can come from the Senate. These are legislative directives. Here's what statutes were for, basically. So that government entity, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, they have agencies and they have political subdivisions, your municipality, okay? They're political subdivisions and they have agencies that they control. So your legislature, they can control those agencies and those municipalities without having to run to the governor to pass a law. So they'll do it through statute. That's why the driving code, when you're in there, that's a statute they're charging you with. When the code inspector idiot's trying to charge you because you didn't get a permit to put a roof on your house, he's moving under an ordinance, which is really just a really subordinate statute, okay? So that's the pecking order. Is the statute is really, that's in that second tier we were talking about, where you have Constitution and legislative law, and then you have administrative law under that, and then you have case law. So here's what simulation of legal process is. We're talking about these statutes. Listen, a statute, there's something called statutory construction. And the underpinning of that basically states that in order for a statute to be relevant, to be valid, it's got to specifically state who it's for and what the duties and obligations are of the subject of this statute. So unless that's clearly defined in that statute, it's not for you or for me, okay? It's got to be clearly defined and it's got to be laid out. So when they're doing things and you can't find it in any statutory law, like my sewer authority, when I purchased the property, they just decided they were going to put me on the customer roll. Well, I read every statute tied to the sewer authority. There is no legal process, no statutory process that says when I bought this property, I became a customer of the sewer authority. That's why I go back to this case. This showed me how they're doing this, okay? When there's no statutory process there, and I actually had the administrator up on the witness stand testify that when I bought the property, I became a customer. And then when I did the record request and stated, please provide me the legally and lawfully promulgated records to support what Ms. Nelson testified to. When I bought this property, I became a customer. And they couldn't find them. They don't have them. They couldn't even point to a statute or a law that says, Mr. Fagel, here's how you became a customer. They had nothing to give me. Well, that's called a simulation of legal process. In other words, it doesn't exist in statute. Guess where they got this process to put me on their customer roll? They did it through a corporate bylaw called a regulation. This is one of their, what they call it, I forget the term for it, but it's basically just a corporate law. It's what they use to run the law. So they came up with this process on how to acquire customers.
Bylaw.
Nowhere in any statute or law. What's that?
Bylaw?
Yeah. Bylaw. Yeah.
Bylaw.
It's nowhere. Oh, it's a resolution. That's it.
Resolution. I knew we'd get it.
It's a resolution. And this is where this billing process came from that doesn't exist in the statute. It's not in any law. Okay. It didn't come from Congress. So it never came from Congress. But the sewer authority decided that they were going to do this billing process where they go to the water company, get your water usage, and then bill you for it, okay? And they also in that resolution, they decided that when you bought property in Delaware County, you became one of their customers. Doesn't exist in any statute or law, but they wrote it down in a resolution. Well, that's like me and Brandon having a fantasy football team and us coming up with our little rules. We got a little rule sheet. We can't apply that to somebody else. That's between me and him, okay? Well, that resolution's for that internal running of that company. So that's called what she did. The two things they've done, put me on a customer role and billing me the way they're billing me, doesn't exist in any law or statute. In other words, the legislature never did this. The sewer authority did this. They don't have authority to do anything like this. That's what you call a simulation of legal process. There's your Title 42, 1983 suit. That's called a color of law action. Why is it color of law? Because it's not in any law, yet they've created it in a resolution. So now they're trying to treat their resolution as though it's an actual law that the Congress passed, the state legislature. They didn't. There's what you call a color of law action. It's a resolution or bylaw that they're trying to treat as a law. They're doing this with everything, with transportation citations. They're doing it with the code inspector idiot that's trying to tell you got to have a certificate of occupancy to rent a property. This is all color of law actions. Nowhere in any state code will you find this written that's applying to me and Brandon. So this is where we try to apply simulation of legal process into it.
And that's what it is. And so for a long time, because I live in an unincorporated town, right? And have for a very long time, I didn't see that particular side of this issue that a lot of you deal with. Most of you live in an incorporated town. I live in an unincorporated town. When I walk outside and I start building on something, there's nobody.
You're in the land of Brandon. You're in the land of Brandon.
But now I see that the 14th Amendment, right, that equal, that Brandon's in this unincorporated town's got the same right that Alphonse got in the incorporated town, because if not, Alphonse is induced to involuntary slavery, while Brandon over here in the unincorporated town's living as a free man.
If I had more rights than you down here, wouldn't that be an unequal protection?
That's unequal. That's unequal, right? So once you grasp these ideas, you'll be able to see them, how they simulate these things. And of course, that's why you go to the administrative court. And I think it was a month or so ago, I just decided to start reading all the administrative. I went to a bunch of cities and I was pulling them up. I wanted to see their civil code for the city, right? And what I got, every single one of them was about a 2-page document called the administrative code. And I was just proving to myself that what we were teaching here about the administrative kangaroo side of it in this legal simulation was in fact true. And I advise everybody else out there to go prove to yourself the difference between an administrative process and a judicial process. The problem that we face, and we've continued to face, is that everybody thinks that these administrative courts operate the same way all the way up the scale. It's not the case. It is not the case, folks.
Yeah, we addressed this pretty good in the last video we did too. Is listen, when you get called in these local municipal courts, you're in McDonald's court or Taco Bell court. Okay, they're treating you like they're inhabitants. You didn't wear the brown uniform today, and they're calling you in to scold you because you didn't wear the brown uniform, and now they're going to fine you because you didn't wear the brown uniform. This is why they're doing what they're doing. That's why they send you that letter in the mail and saying, hey, Mr. Fagioli, there's a judgment against you. We talked about what due process is. I got to get service of process. I mean, I need that guy knocking on the door looking for me, handing me the complaint and the summons. Okay, this is how we get a civil action started. It's the only way you can start a civil action is service of process. Otherwise, if I could slap a stamp on an envelope and sue Brandon, why would I go pay that guy $150 service processor to serve Brandon? A 50-cent stamp. I just saved myself $149.50. There's a reason.
And who cares whether he gets it or not? We'll just go file a default judgment when he doesn't get it. I mean, why? Come on. I mean, the whole process is set up to make sure that you get your day in court. You get the allotted time to defend yourself in court.
Now, we were talking about this too, and this is a real thing. People think it's made up. Listen, I told you, when you go to these municipal courts, we call them the kangaroo courts, you're going to McDonald's court, okay? You're going to be treated as one of their employees. And look, Brandon, here's what the ordinance says. You violated the ordinance. You know, what do you plead, Brandon? You plead guilty or not guilty? And what do you plead? That's what they're doing to you. Okay, they're pulling you in these administrative courts. Now, if you walk into that administrative court and you just start conversing and talking, they're going to claim that you made a general appearance. Okay, that means you've granted the court jurisdiction in this matter, that you've basically told the court that, yeah, they have jurisdiction in this matter to resolve this matter. That's why we tell people when you're going to challenge jurisdiction, you make what's called a special appearance.